Hello, welcome back to my kitchen. Today I wanted to make some burek, which I tried a few times whilst I was on holiday in Hungary. It's a meat-filled phyllo pastry, which was really delicious to have. And yeah, so I'm just going to start by dicing some onion. I just cut a few slits into it, so it just dices really easily, and I've left the root on so it doesn't just fall apart before I finish dicing. So I'm using around 250 grams of onion because I'm using half a kilo of beef and sheep mince. If you want more onion in your burek, you can always use more, you can use less, it's up to you. I'm just dicing these up roughly. I'm going to fry these off soon. You can use any type of onion you want. I'm just using what I have on hand. Unfortunately, because I was away for quite a while, a lot of my onions had rotten, so I'm just trying to use mine up. So when these are diced, you can get ready to fry them off. So the onions have been chopped, the tears have been shed, courtesy of having a blunt knife. And I'm going to add a generous glug of olive oil to our pan and my onions. And these are going to fry a little just until they're soft and translucent, basically, which should take around 5 minutes. And to the onions, I'm going to add a little sprinkling of salt just to help them sweat. I have the onions frying on a medium-high heat. They've turned translucent, they're soft, and I just added a cube and a half of frozen garlic. Unfortunately, I didn't have any fresh garlic left. If you're using fresh, I'd recommend around 3 cloves of minced garlic. And now this is ready for the mince. I've added around 500 grams of mince. This is a mixture of beef and sheep. You can use any type of mince you prefer. I'm just going to mix this up. Try to break it up so you're not left with big clumps of meat. We're going to season this well. To the mince, I'm going to add plenty of salt. Ground black pepper, you can grind it yourself as well. Plenty of it. A little chilli powder. This is optional. I just want a little tiny bit of heat in there. And this is also optional. I'm going to add a couple of teaspoons of paprika. This is a really good quality Hungarian paprika, but you can use whatever you have on hand. And then going to mix everything in. So we're going to mix all those spices in. Give it a chance to fry up a little. Make sure you break all those clumps of meat and let it brown. This is also an optional step, but I like to add a few dashes of Worcestershire sauce. I feel like this just really helps with the meatiness of the dish, and I love to add it to any meat dish that I make. The meat has browned. I just tasted it for seasoning again and decided it needed a touch more paprika and a little bit more salt and pepper. But yeah, do make sure you taste it for seasoning, and make sure there's not too much moisture left in the mixture, otherwise it will make your pastry soggy when you try to assemble it later. I left just a tiny bit, enough where if you run your spoon you might see a little bit here and there. And I'm going to leave it to cool completely for an hour or two before I assemble the burek. Getting ready to assemble the burek. In a measuring bowl, I've measured out around 5 tablespoons of oil, or roughly 50 millilitres, and we're going to add enough water to make it up to around 400 millilitres. Our oil and water mixture is ready. Every now and again, when you're going to splash it onto the burek, just give it a little mix, because the oil, of course, will rise to the top. I'm just going to use a pie tin. This is the largest thing I have on hand. I know it's inside out, it's because it's slightly dented and this just helps. I'm going to drizzle in a little oil, maybe about a tablespoon worth, and we're just going to brush that around the pan. If you need to add more, you can always add more. I'm just going to brush this all over the base. I'm just actually going to add a little more. Phyllo pastry is quite dry, which is why you have to use quite a lot of oil or butter with it, just to help it stay nice and crispy without being, well, too dry. Next, I'm going to grab my phyllo pastry. I bought 2 packs of 12 sheets just in case. Make sure to keep it rolled up as long as you can because it does dry out very, very quickly. So what we're going to do, using a clean surface, we're going to take 2 sheets, 2 nice thin sheets, there's 2 here already, and we're going to line the bottom of this pan. It doesn't have to be perfect, but just to give it a nice crunchy base. To the pastry, we're going to add some of the meat. We're not going to add too much at a time, just a little here and there. It'll look like a really small amount, but it's because we're going to build it up in lots of thin layers. You can use your hands to spread it around, but really it's just a really small amount. And when you've got that nicely crumbled in, we're going to get some of this oil and water mixture and sprinkle it on. I don't have a sprayer, so I'm just going to use my hands, take a little in my hands and just sort of spread it on, let it drip in. And this will help keep the pastry moist. It'll be messy, but it's worth it. Then we're going to place another piece of pastry on top. Oops, it doesn't matter if it tears, just pull it right back in. And we're going to repeat, add a little more meat. And then you're going to sprinkle your water and oil mixture on. This next layer is going to be slightly different. So we're going to spread the phyllo on, tuck it in, and the meat, we're only going to add it right at the edges. This is just so you don't forget. You get a little bit of meat in every bite, not just the centre. It doesn't matter if a little spreads in the middle, of course, but spread it round the edges. And then repeat with your oil and water mixture. You're going to keep repeating this process. Let's say every third sheet, make sure you do go around the edges, and then back to sprinkling a little bit in the middle. You can use your hands to just spread it out a little more. Your hands are already going to get messy anyway, so it doesn't matter either way. When you've done that, tuck those edges in. Every time you add meat to the edges, tuck those edges right back in. And try to flatten it down a little, and repeat. When your meat has run out for the top layer, just repeat with 2 sheets of paper. I actually had an extra sheet left, so I'm using 3 instead, but that doesn't matter. In fact, I'm going to alternate it a little bit, just so it folds in like relatively evenly. So we're going to just do it like this. I'm going to push that right down, as far down as you can. And with your remaining oil and water mixture, you're going to get a really good splash on the top. It's going to look like you've added way too much, but that's how it should look. Because remember, this has to be kept moist in the oven. I'm sorry for the people that hate the word moist, but I'm going to spread all that around as well. Your hands are going to feel super oily by the end. And what we're going to do is tuck the edges of that pastry right back in. It doesn't have to look perfect. In fact, if it looks a little rough, I feel like that just adds the sort of rusticness of the dish. I'm going to fold that in, press it right down, and add a little more of the oil and water mixture to the top. It's going to need a really generous amount. And this is ready for the oven. One final step before it goes into the oven is just to poke some holes into it to help the heat get through and some of that moisture to escape. I don't have any toothpicks or anything, so I'm just using a chopstick. You can use a fork or even a thin knife. This is just to help it crisp up in the oven. If you want, you can do a final check just to make sure everything's really tightly bound in there. And this is ready to go into a preheated 180-degree oven or 200. You'll know your oven better than me. I find with different ovens things cook differently, like a different rate. What works in some doesn't necessarily work in others. So, and you're going to cook it until it's a really nice golden brown. I place my dish onto another tray just in case any oil leaks out whilst it's cooking. The burek is nice and golden brown. I just took it out of the oven. I'm going to give it around 10 to 15 minutes just to cool down a little before eating it. I feel like it'll taste better after that and you don't want to burn your tongue. but it's nice and crispy, crunchy. And yeah, so if you enjoyed the recipe and you'd like to see more, please do leave a like, subscribe, click that notification bell, and I'll hopefully be uploading again soon. Thank you for watching. Bye.